Questions surrounding the competency of a teen who shot Portsmouth police officer Now Jaclyn. Will Patterson's defense is raising the question after a jury already found the teen guilty of attempted capital murder of a police officer. 13 News Now reporter Jaclyn Lee is in the studio tonight to explain the move.
David, a doctor found Patterson mentally incompetent to stand trial for separate robbery charges. His defense argues this proves Patterson was mentally incompetent for the attempted capital murder case.
It's a motion the Commonwealth's attorney calls a moot point. Patterson's defense argued before a judge today that since a doctor found the teen mentally incompetent to stand trial for a separate robbery case, Patterson was also mentally incompetent during the Portsmouth police officer shooting trial.
You know, this is a defense that is typically raised during a trial, so the Commonwealth, of course, is going to oppose that.
13 News Now legal analyst Ed Booth weighed in on the defense's motion, especially since the robberies and the shooting occurred within weeks of each other.
But I understand why they would bring that up. I mean, the fact that it's very close together, certainly lends itself to the argument that the defense is making.
The Commonwealth's attorney struck back in court, saying the defense never raised the issue during trial, and they had plenty of time to do so. They also said they have proof Patterson is making up mental illness in order to get out of the charges. Ultimately, the judge ruled Patterson must receive a mental evaluation strictly for sentencing purposes.
The judge is not going to open the door back up to whether or not he understood what he was doing at the time of the offense, because that was a trial issue.
The judge's ruling indicates the jury's conviction will still stand.
And after court, I spoke with Patterson's mom and asked what she thought of what happened in court today. She told me if he's not competent to stand trial for the robbery charges, that he definitely was incompetent to stand trial for this case. I agree with his lawyers that he should have been tested for competency from the beginning. And Patterson's attorney will appear in court September 6th to figure out how this case will proceed. Jaclyn Lee, 13 News Now.